Welcome everyone to another edition of Gavin Newstar Presents here on Channel Gboot2786. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you are blessed and doing safe. We're waiting on our guest, and I think our special guest has arrived, Attorney Tom Mesereau. We're gonna get him in a few seconds. So I hope you all are staying tuned. We're gonna have a lot to talk about. It's gonna be a great show tonight, guys. Please hit that like button, share this video, share this live stream. If you guys enjoy great content, we also ask that you please donate to the channel. We're going to get started in a few seconds. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see me. It looks like I don't know what's going on with this camera. uh, okay, hold on a second. Let's try and add Tom to the call. Tom, are you there?
I'm here. How you doing, Gavin?
I'm doing fine. How you doing?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back on. Looks like you're calling through the phone, and I'm calling through the computer, but I can't be seen for some reason. But as long as you can hear me, I guess that's a good thing.
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, I'm gonna work on while we're talking, guys. I'll work on the screen and see if I can come on. I don't know why it's giving me an issue, but uh, Tom, it's good that you're back on. Last time you were on, Tom, we had you back. It was back in April when you came onto the platform. We're grateful that you're able to come back on. How are things in Southern California?
Well, everything is COVID. Until very recently, and perhaps even still today, Los Angeles has been the epicenter of COVID. So we've had a lot of lockdown, a lot of controversy about whether schools can be reopened, a lot of controversy about whether restaurants should be able to invite people either outside or inside. It's everything's dominated by COVID. We have to beat this whole thing.
Yes, and I guess I could start off with this topic right now. Since we're talking about California, the other thing is whether your governor Newsom will be recalled or not. It's being reported, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. But they have over 1.3 million signatures on the website to recall Governor Newsom right now. And apparently it's getting closer to, I think, enough petitions, enough signatures for election season. And I wanted to ask you about it, if you could talk about it, if you know anything in regards to that.
Well, I only know what the media tells me, and he's not being portrayed in a good light on almost a daily basis. The that act of misjudgment where he went to the restaurant after being pretty
Right.
strict with the citizens of California about where they could go and couldn't go continues to haunt him, and the media continues to blast that scene where he doesn't have a mask and he's at a high priced restaurant. I remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected governor. He was elected governor because the previous governor was recalled.
Great day.
And the previous governor is, I've seen him in my building a lot. He practices law. So recalls, can definitely happen in this state. And I would have to say that Governor Newsom appears to be rather unpopular at the moment. So anything's possible.
Yeah, most definitely. As of now, I could tell you, because you mentioned the things that are shut down here in New Orleans. Mardi Gras is not happening. We're going to have we have already like homes alone out down in Uptown here in New Orleans, as well as down Carrollton Street, Carrollton Avenue, excuse me, that have been decorated as floats. So that's the closest we're going to have. People are doing things virtual, but there's no floats or any large crowds or anything like that. And in fact, the mayor here, Mayor Cantrell, she actually ordered all bars are in the French Quarter are to be closed for the weekend. So we're not going to have anything. But here in New Orleans, we always find they're going to find a way to do something. We don't. The party doesn't stop even with COVID. Uh,
Well, particularly when
yeah,
it comes to football, I'm an Army football fan. My father played football at West Point, and I was born at West Point. My
right,
grandfather's an honorary member of West Point class of 1915, and my uncle taught at West Point. And Army's an independent football team. And this year, all of a sudden, about 9 games got canceled. And they were an independent, they couldn't play inside a conference. So within 4 weeks, they had filled up their schedule. Almost every team was a Southern football team. I mean, when it came to, playing football, the South was not going to be told what to do, so
right.
so I'll never forget the way Army filled their schedule up with new teams in 4 weeks.
Right. That's yeah. The people in the South, they don't like being told what to do at all. People don't like it. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to watch what happens there in Cali. We got some people in the chat. Tom, my friend Bishop Gerald Scott, he says hello there, Gavin and Attorney Mesereau. Bossy Queenie says greetings, as well as Miss P. Yeah, I'm glad that we brought all that up because I wanted to talk to you. I was going to save it for the end, but since we mentioned California and all that's going on, yeah, I remembered when that happened. I also remembered when Nancy Pelosi got caught going into uh, the hair salon. Uh,
Yeah, she said she was set up, and that was a terrible way to respond to it. I mean,
right,
she made a mistake. Gavin Newsom made a mistake. People make mistakes. They should just admit it and move on. But this pandemic has been, nobody really knew from the beginning exactly how to handle it. I think everybody is doing their best trying to figure out how to balance the scientific requirements to beat this disease with the practical requirements that people need to make a living and kids need to go to school.
right,
And it's been a seesaw back and forth, I think, from day one, and it's really strained a lot of nerves everywhere. Right now, I think the momentum is to get schools open. You're seeing
right,
even lawsuits against school districts by the cities themselves. I know the city of San Francisco sued the San Francisco School District recently to reopen. And, it's these kids are just, they're really bearing the brunt of something they don't understand, they didn't create, they don't want. And I think we've been feeling our way as best we can from day one. I'm speaking very generally. And nobody, even today, as we're speaking this very moment, knows, do lockdowns really work? Do they not work? You've got Los Angeles in a lockdown, and you've got Miami, Florida doing better than Los Angeles, and they're not in a lockdown. So I don't know.
hmm
I'm not pretending that I know what the answer is, but I think we've been trying to feel our way since day one, and it's been very difficult.
So is LA in when you say lockdown, is there a curfew that's in effect in Los Angeles? Have they closed? I
Well,
take
they're loosening things up. I mean, they just allowed restaurants to reopen outside, but for Super Bowl weekend, they were not allowed to have TVs.
mm,
And there's a feeling that these events are super spreaders, and we've got to stop super spreaders to beat this disease. And, there was so much pressure to let restaurants reopen because our restaurants, I grew up in the restaurant business. Restaurants exist on a very slim profit margin at best.
right, right.
And when you do what's been done during the pandemic, I mean, you're just putting people out of business permanently.
Right.
You know,
And yeah, that's happening here in New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans is a tourist attraction. It's a tourist town. That's how it makes its money. So
sure.
when things are closed down, and so forth, bars, already. they've had to lay off their employees because they don't have any money to pay for them, especially during that time when we were all on lockdown for a whole, over a year. So it's certainly, and some businesses I've read are not coming back as a result of it because they've been set so far behind with a lot of things. So overall, I can see here in America, people are frustrated. You know, it's
People are frustrated. They're angry. They're losing their temper more easily. I mean, road rage is getting worse and worse, and it's a very sad state of affairs. But I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine being distributed. I'm getting my second shot Thursday, um,
okay. So
and
you've got your first shot already.
I got my first shot. I had no adverse reaction at all. It was a Pfizer shot, and getting my next one this Thursday, which I've heard most people have some reaction to.
Yeah, they've had some reaction. I don't know if it had anything to do with this, but I saw Jesse Jackson was hospitalized with some abdominal problems, and I remember he was advocating for the shot. I don't know if it had anything to do with it. I've read articles. I mean, people send me things all the time, but I've seen articles. I saw a doctor who just received his first vaccine shot, and then the next day he said he came down with COVID-19. So
Oh boy.
and some people have adverse reactions to it. I'm not an anti-vaxxer myself, but I know some people are just hesitant about doing it. I'm not in a rush, just me personally. But yeah, but
Well, it's hard to figure out what to do even if you are vaccinated, because no one seems to have a consensus on what the effect of a vaccination is, other than it's supposed to be quite positive in terms of resistance to the virus, but nobody knows how long the vaccine seems to work. Nobody knows,
right.
if you should change wearing a mask or anything else just because you're vaccinated. I mean, my attitude is going to be, yes, I've been vaccinated, but I'm going to keep to wearing a mask and socially distance and that kind of thing.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, they still tell you even after the vaccination to still socially distance. From what I've heard, that's still the requirements that's coming down from the White House and the CDC.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, Tom, another thing that happened this week, of course, was Super Bowl Sunday, but it was also called Janet Jackson Appreciation Day. And I know you have a great association with the Jackson family. And it was also special for me because February 7th is I celebrated my 35th birthday.
Oh,
So,
happy birthday.
yeah, thank you. So I was trying to get Janet to say something when I tweeted it out, but I didn't get it. but,
Uh-huh.
uh, but that Super Bowl, of course, everyone calls it Janet Jackson Appreciation Day because back in '04, that I don't even call it a scandal, but what happened with her and Justin Timberlake, she was essentially railroaded in the media and the press by, and I saw it came out that the former head of CBS, Les Moonves, tried to stifle her career. Uh, and I think this was going on around that Super Bowl. It might have been around the time Michael was going through his charges, if I'm not mistaken, because that was in '04. I think February of '04.
Well, in '04 and '05, Michael was facing the criminal charges that he ultimately was acquitted of.
Right,
And I was his lead criminal defense counsel in the trial, which began in January of 2005 and ended in June of 2005. So
right.
that was a rough period for Michael.
It was most definitely. And but it still paid off. Thank you for doing what you did, and you were able to vindicate brother Michael. Essentially when you had what the DA's office had 13 other prior bad act witnesses, and you or was it that amount, and y'all were able to get basically kill their stories or discredit them, I
Well,
should say.
no, they brought in, first of all, they indicted him on 10 felony counts. And
Right,
when the verdict had to be rendered by the jury, the judge, on his own motion, added 4 possible misdemeanor counts to the 10 felony counts. And He did this on his own motion. The last 4 felony counts were basically giving a child alcohol for purposes of molestation. And what the judge did, because I think he thought the prosecution was in trouble, with respect to those 4 counts, he allowed the jury, if they acquitted him of any of those counts, to then consider a lesser included misdemeanor of giving alcohol to an underage person. And the jury came back with 14 not guilties, so they acquitted him of everything, 10 felonies and 4 misdemeanors. It was a
Right.
real blow to the prosecution. But they did bring in, California is pretty pro-prosecution when it comes to bringing in, other types of acts that are considered to be similar to prove motive, intent, that kind of thing. So
Right.
they did bring in evidence that other young men had been allegedly molested. They were allowed to bring in, they wanted to bring in a bunch of stuff. They were allowed to bring in 5. I started my defense case with 3 of those 5 as my first 3 witnesses saying they were never touched.
Right.
That didn't exactly help the prosecution's credibility.
And that was Macaulay Culkin was a defense witness, right?
He was my second witness. Wade
Okay.
Robson was the first one. Macaulay Culkin was the second one.
Right. And Wade, of course, is the one, and I'm going to bring this up. He was the one that sued the Michael Jackson's estate, he and James Safechuck, and they did this Leaving Neverland crap, this documentary that basically tried to frame Michael, and they changed it, frame Michael as a child molester, but they originally had been defending him, especially Wade.
Well, Wade was an actual witness in the trial.
Right.
And Wade was very, very powerful in his defense of Michael Jackson. I met Wade for the first time at Neverland during the trial. I met him with his mother and his sister, who had traveled with Wade and Michael during some of these tours.
Right.
And I call them as witnesses too. The whole family seemed to be pro-Michael from what I saw. And all 3 of them were very powerful witnesses for Michael. But Wade was very adamant that he hadn't been touched improperly at any time. And he was subjected to a very powerful, tough, withering cross-examination by a very good prosecutor, Ron Zonin, and he held his own. And, as I said before, the mother and the sister who had traveled with them, who had slept on Michael's bed as well, they testified that nothing improper ever happened as far as they knew. And these were strong witnesses for Michael. And then Macaulay followed Wade Robson, and he was equally powerful. He was absolutely adamant. I've been a friend of Michael for a long time. We have a lot in common. We're
He
both
christened his
childhood.
children, if I'm not mistaken. Macaulay is the godfather to all 3 kids.
Yeah, and Macaulay said, look, we've been close friends for a long time. We both know what it's like to be a child star. There are advantages and disadvantages to it, and we've talked a lot about our family situations. He's my friend, and he never did anything improper. It's ridiculous, So to start, the third person I called as a witness was another fellow from Australia, Brett Barnes, who the prosecution claimed had been molested. And he said, I wasn't touched either. And he said, I just gave up a good job, in my hometown to come here and testify, but I'm not going to let this kind of nonsense, be told. He said, he never did a thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very powerful way to start the defense case, in my opinion.
Right. And, I do want to talk about this because, I've thought certainly Mike, and we talked about the last time with your topic, but when you came on back in April, but I felt Michael, of course, was getting railroaded. And I know I went through the reasons why you think it may have happened, but uh, in terms of this lawsuit that was filed, and Tom, I know you're not representing the family state right now, but I did want to talk about this issue. It stated that a judge back in Court of Appeals back in December, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the lower court's ruling and said that an arbitrator can proceed with regard that the lawsuit can proceed against HBO with an arbitrator in regards to the Leaving Neverland documentary. And I just want to know what your thoughts were on that decision, if you could.
Well, I am not counsel of record in that case,
Right.
but I am special counsel to the estate. I do
Okay.
work with John Branca on various matters related to the estate. And that was certainly a big victory for the estate. The estate lawyers, Howard Weitzman and his firm, did a terrific job and are doing a terrific job in that case. Jonathan Stein Sapper also works closely with Howard Weitzman. These are great lawyers. And I think they've got HBO on their heels a little bit. I don't think
Right.
HBO ever thought, that the estate would dig up that prior agreement and enforce it the way they're doing. And if I were HBO, I'd be a little concerned about what the clause they're enforcing says, because I think the estate has a real good chance of winning that one.
Yes, this was a non-disparagement clause that was signed for Michael's 1992 concert film from the Dangerous tour. Excuse me. I actually remember that because I think Michael came at the end. Michael put on a spacesuit and flew off uh,
Mm-hmm.
into the sky. I remember it as a kid because I was watching it by we were watching it by my grandfather's house when it aired. I was about 6 years old, so I was a big Michael Jackson fan back then. And I know you already know Tom because whenever Michael's videos debuted, everybody would stop doing what they were doing. When he did his "Remember the Time" video, I think that aired on three different networks at the same time. And so that was huge for us to see because it was also the first time that Michael, well, not Michael, but we saw Egypt in regards to its natural state of being an African country. And I have
Mm-hmm.
those black actors and actresses like Iman and Eddie Murphy and Magic Johnson. And although his acting was bad,
Mm-hmm.
uh, see, Tom agrees. Tiny Lister,
I
yeah, and
didn't I didn't agree to
well,
that.
he said, yeah, behold, great Pharaoh Ramsey. Yeah.
I
Uh,
remember that. That's right.
right. And Eddie Murphy, what are you going to do today? Yes. So but yeah, that was huge. And I think Michael wanted to make that into a film, if I'm not mistaken, at one point. But he had trouble, I guess, with the producers getting it together, and he made it into a short film, but nonetheless, it was great. But uh, yes, I think they have a great chance of succeeding on this one, and they're sued for $100 million, and I guess our arbitrator will go to that, and maybe HBO might reconsider or consider with their counsel seeing how they can settle this. But I know you, who knows,
Well, I got to tell you, first of all, I have not seen Leaving Neverland, and I won't see it. I
right?
just will not dignify it. But
Me neither.
everything I've been told about it is just a travesty. I mean, it just sounds like such a gratuitous hatchet job to make money, is what it sounds like to me. Um, all I know is I sat down with Wade Robson. He was Michael's strongest advocate, and as you know, Gavin, in a criminal trial, the defense has to think, a lot about whether or not they even want to put on a defense.
Right,
Because sometimes if your cross-examination appears very effective during the prosecution's case, you may want to rest on your cross and just let it get to the jury. But if you put on your own case, you're then calling witnesses who are also going to be subjected to cross-examination by the prosecution. So there are
right,
pluses and minuses to putting on a defense case. And I felt in that trial that my cross examinations had been so effective in the prosecution's case that there was a very good chance, of winning just on that. But I came to the conclusion we'd probably hang if we didn't put on a defense case. And I wanted to take the risks we had to take, put on witnesses. And if you do that, you want to start strong and you want to end strong. You want to
right,
organize your witnesses so the first few at least are very powerful and the last few are very powerful. Other witnesses you call for a particular reason. If they're not as powerful, you try and stick them in the middle. It's strictly a psychological tactic. Well, I started the Michael Jackson defense case with Wade Robson because he was so powerfully supportive of Michael Jackson. And he was so powerful in his attack on the prosecution's claims that he was molested.
uh-huh,
He was intelligent, he was articulate, he was charismatic. I thought he would be very effective, and I followed him with Macaulay Culkin. And
right,
suddenly, years later, when Michael isn't even around, to have him, change his story like this is just very, very upsetting to me. And I just don't buy it at all. I
I don't
just,
buy it either. And, I think Wade and James are punks. I'll say that these are my words. I think that they, especially from what I've heard, I saw Michael's niece Brandy. She stated that at one point she and Wade were in a relationship for several years. She never witnessed anything, and to that effect, what I've been hearing more from people that are closer to the situation was that Wade burned his bridges with a lot of people in Hollywood, and including Michael to a certain degree. But I think that what you're seeing is basically what people will do for money. And sadly, Michael is not here to defend himself. And I just think it's wrong that they're bringing all of this stuff up again when, this man is no longer with us. I feel the same way about Kobe Bryant, too, because they tried to mention his rape accusations. And after he died, I mean, Kobe and his daughter and those people that were in the helicopter accident had just weren't even cold, to say the least. And I saw, different celebrities talking about he's a rapist and so forth. And I'm like, where's the compassion?
well, wasn't Kobe's criminal case dismissed?
Well, it was dismissed because prosecutors didn't have any evidence. And this was actually at the trial. I mean, not at the trial, at the preliminary hearing. My understanding from everything was that, and I'm not trying to be vulgar, but the alleged victim, supposedly the evidence that they had, it was they testified. I don't believe Kobe testified, but essentially what they stated was she was messing around with multiple people, and Mr. Bryant, Kobe Bryant, was one of them. And during intercourse, from what I heard, it got painful for her. He apologized, and this was reported right after Kobe had passed away. Someone from the New York Post reran an article, and it was entitled "Kobe Bryant is not a rapist," and he apologized basically for it being painful, and that was it. It
Yeah.
was That's not rape. When you say I raped someone, or you accuse someone of rape, you're saying that they took away your consent or the victim's consent uh, and forced intercourse on her. That's what rape is. And I see the same thing and we'll talk about Mr. Cosby and his appeal in a second. But I saw the same thing with Cosby, where they try to say Mr. Cosby is the most. I've seen people say he's the serial rapist of the 21st century. I'm like, give me a break. He wasn't convicted on rape, and that's the fault of people not reading. Most Americans, Tom, don't even read articles that they share online. At least 20% of them actually read the story than just looking at the headline of it. And I've seen a lot of people get in trouble when they do that. The most important thing is to read. They
Sure.
say reading is fundamental. And yeah, and Mr. Bryant, yeah, Kobe Bryant, I see Michael Jackson, I see Sam Cooke, and a lot of these black celebrities, Mike Tyson included, and Bill Cosby, they get accused falsely of things without any evidence. And I do want to talk to you a little bit later on about the T.I. Tiny situation, because it seems like Me Too is starting up again. Because I remember just this past year when it kind of died down, now it's coming back with accusations against T.I. and Tiny. But I do want to ask you, I guess we could get into the Bill Cosby case, tying it with Michael. I want to ask you this. Did you notice a difference in regards to the media presence with Michael and Cosby? Was it about the same as to the way they were treated?
Well, with Michael, you had 2,200 accredited media from around the world covering that trial. Now, that's more than O.J. Simpson and Scott Peterson combined.
Right.
And Michael was the best known person in the entire world at that point. I mean, article after article said this is the most famous human being on the planet. And verdict day, I mean, capitals all over the world, activity stopped. I mean, Times Square, New York, on the big screen, everybody stopped what they were doing to see what was going to happen when the verdict was announced. So there were more media people, accredited media people covering Jackson, but certainly Bill Cosby got extensive coverage because he's one of the greatest entertainers ever. a great comedian, great social critic, a
Yes.
great philanthropist. I mean, people just have forgotten just how much money this man gave to worthwhile causes. I mean, he gave over $200 million to
Right.
historic black colleges, to scholarships to help young people from the inner city get educated.
Right. He created the Black Stuntmen's Association in Hollywood. He co-created that.
an
Yeah.
absolute legend,
Yeah.
who did so much good for society. Um, a lot of people forgot that, and the media didn't want to talk about it. You know, before the Michael Jackson trial, I wanted a network to do a expose on all the wonderful things Michael had done that had not been reported. You know, the fact that every time he traveled anywhere to give a concert, he would visit a hospital for disadvantaged children. The fact that he had heard about children, you know, children who'd been burned, children who'd been abused, children
Mm-hmm.
who were seriously ill with cancer all over the world, and he would pay their bills without telling anyone in the press about it. And nobody wanted to cover it. Well, the same thing with Bill Cosby. You know, we wanted coverage about just what a philanthropist he'd been, what he'd done for historic black colleges, what he had done for inner city families, you know, just what he had done without expecting anything in return. And all the media wanted to do was, you know, cover whatever negative inferences they could find anywhere. Um,
Right.
and you know, both men before the trial started, you know, the very week before the trial started, the media were saturating everybody with negative information, trying to affect the jury pool, for example. You know, when Michael's jury was deliberating for 8 days, the major networks were showing jail cells where he was supposed to go. Where the same thing with, you know, Bill Cosby. I mean, you know, the week before we're picking a jury, the major networks are showing, you know, scandalous films on Bill Cosby. Nobody wanted to focus on how many wonderful things this man has done.
Right.
And I want to make very clear, he's one of the nicest men I ever met. He's a brilliant, brilliant man in so many ways, and was always adamant to me he'd never done anything wrong and was absolutely innocent of these charges. He always repeated that to me, and I absolutely believe him.
Right. Well, I think what we have today, Tom, is that we're judging even things. People are judging things on an era from 40, 50 years ago with today's eyes. And I know for a fact, though, even back then in the 1960s, a black man that ever thought of trying to harm or touch a white woman, especially, I think the earliest accusation goes back to 1965, they would have found themselves lynched. Mr. Cosby was not, you know, while he was very popular at that time, I don't believe as a black man he would have been able to get away with the things that they are saying that he did. For instance, just forcing oral sex on a woman on the backstage and on a Tonight Show, for instance. And we look at the record. Well, Bill Cosby wasn't even at the Tonight Show at the time this woman accused him. I think it was Louise Mertz. Uh, you know, I, I certainly the reason why I certainly don't believe he's guilty of these charges, and I want to talk about his appeal. Uh, and I reason why I brought Michael and Cosby together when I was asking about the difference in the media attention, we didn't see even black media. I've been critical out there as much. Maybe just one person from the associated from the National Black Press Association, Stacey Brown, and I know you're familiar with Stacey with his coverage on Michael. I know there are issues, don't agree with him there, but uh, he was the one. He actually has been vocal, I guess, in his support of Cosby because he feels that Mr. Cosby was railroaded. But I haven't seen anyone from mainstream media say this. I've seen mostly attacks. This is one thing I look at this case. It's very similar to a Shepard versus Maxwell situation, as you're familiar with, where mainstream media played a huge role in Sam Shepard's conviction, and that's why the Supreme Court obviously had to overturn it because they said his conviction because he didn't get a fair trial. Uh, when I look at, I'm going to talk about Bill Cosby's his appeal in a second. Now, I have it on CNN with this article that I've shared, and there's a reason. I don't know if you Andrew, if you and Andrew Wyatt or anyone still talk anymore. Tom, are you all
We
still
do.
close?
We're good friends. We talk all the time.
Okay, well, he was on. I think this was a show in Philadelphia, but he stated that Cosby and CNN's director, or Jeff Zucker, the CNN president, who's stepping down, by the way, they do not like each other. And he stated something to the effect that uh, he would do everything in his power to destroy Bill Cosby. Now, I'm paraphrasing that, but essentially, the sentiment is there that he does not like Mr. Cosby from what Mr. Wyatt has stated. And I remember the documentaries. You're talking about uh, the scandals that they want to focus on. They had something called the case against Cosby. Well, I deliberately put this article up to discuss Mr. Cosby's appeal. This is from CNN, and it says Pennsylvania Supreme Court pointedly questions use of prior bad act witnesses in Bill Cosby's trial. The judges on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court questioned and expressed skepticism about the use of the five prior bad act witnesses in Bill Cosby's criminal trial during an appeal hearing on Tuesday. That was on December 1st. Cosby, 83, is more than 2 years into a 3 to 10 year sentence at a prison outside Philadelphia for drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constant, a former Temple University employee at Cosby's home in 2004. The three assault charges in the case centered on Constant's testimony, but at his criminal trial, Montgomery County Judge Stephen O'Neill allowed five other women, including supermodel Janice Dickinson, to testify as a prior bad act witness, who said that Cosby had similarly drugged them. I said witness, I meant witnesses. Drugged them with the intent of assaulting them in previous incidents. Cosby's attorney, Jennifer Bojan, argued Tuesday in a virtual hearing that these witnesses unfairly prejudiced the jury, and some judges suggested they agreed. I tend to agree that this evidence was extraordinarily prejudicial to your client, Justice Max Baer said to Bongine. The state Supreme Court is made up of 7 members, and at least 4 sharply questioned ADA Adrian Jop, who argued for the prosecution. She argued that the prior bad act witnesses showed Cosby had a common scheme or plan an assault. She also said that their testimony showed Cosby did not make a mistake or accident in his actions. However, Justice Kevin Dougherty questioned whether the witness accounts, which dated to incidents in the 1980s, were too distant to be appropriate. In addition, Justice Christine Donahue questioned whether the prior bad act witnesses were too dissimilar from Constand's allegations. Frankly, I don't see it. To avoid myself being tongue tied, I won't read too much there, but they also argued with Deputy District Attorney Robert Phelan, who was arguing about the binding agreement between Bruce Castor and Bill Cosby. Interesting enough, Bruce Castor was representing Donald Trump today on the impeachment matters, and they tried to tie that into Cosby in certain news articles. I can't think of who the association was, but Tom, in looking at this, I don't know if you saw the appeal that day, but Nicole, shout out to Nicole if she's watching. Brother Ron Hurd of We All Be News and Drew Story News. We actually covered the hearing, and I can tell you, every time the judges stopped and interrupted the ADA, I was cheering when they were asking tough questions. And so when I see things like Justice Max Baer saying, frankly, I don't see it. It seems like Mr. Cosby has a strong case. Did you watch? You didn't get a chance to watch the appeal, Tom, or were you watching it?
I didn't watch it. I certainly heard some of it, and I know a lot about the issues because I was lead trial counsel in the trial. I know I'm
Right.
not on the appellate team, and I think his appellate lawyers have done a fantastic job. What one thing I'm glad I did at the trial phase was I had 3 appellate lawyers on our team making a fantastic record. They were making objections almost on a daily basis, supplementing the record with points and authorities, and making a tremendous record for appeal. For example, when it comes to these 5 other women who were allowed to testify, we filed over 100 pages of objections to
Mm-hmm.
pointing out how dissimilar their allegations were, how prejudicial allowing this kind of evidence in was. I mean, look, when you're charged with something, you got to fight that charge. And that's no easy task much of the time, whether you're innocent or not. And Bill Cosby is completely innocent of this thing, as far as I'm concerned. Um, but when you try and bring in 5 other cases, some of them from 30 years ago, first of all, how do you investigate those cases? Do you go back to the location and find DNA? Do you find fiber evidence? Do you find trace evidence? Do you find witnesses who remember exactly what happened? I mean, it's almost impossible.
Right.
And yet, that kind of evidence comes into the courtroom. In my opinion, it was designed to prejudice the jury against the defense. And I made sure we were papering on a daily basis our objections to this kind of stuff. And I had the former chief of appeals of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, the Central District.
Yeah.
She'd been chief of appeals. I had her making an appellate record on a daily basis. Um, and and I think the appellate lawyers have also, done a fantastic job. And I think anyone who followed the hearing before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has to be hopeful, because it was pretty rough on the prosecution based on what little I saw and what I've been told about it. So I'm
Yes.
really pushing for Bill Cosby. He's a great guy. He's a courageous guy. He's a principled man. He was railroaded, in my opinion, and he didn't get a fair shake.
Most definitely. And the judge there, if you could talk about it, you've, I mean, expressed dissatisfaction with Judge O'Neill. Uh, he was, I mean, when you have the outbursts that were in the court that took place from the witnesses and even from the people outside, as a judge, that he has authority to limit or control, well, clearly control what's going on in his courtroom, and even to that aspect outside. I mean, is that not, and all of this is being done in front of the jury, especially when they see the crowd of the women out there, and the one girl who jumped out at him with her bare naked, well, with half naked, out of the bushes.
Well,
I
it
mean,
was, outside the courthouse, it was a circus. I mean, it was not designed to be positive for Bill Cosby at all. It was designed, in my opinion, to prejudice the media, to prejudice anybody following the case against him. That's how I saw it. And I don't want to talk about the other 5 witnesses particularly. Let the appellate court handle that.
sure,
But the very concept that you would let 5 other accusers
sure,
in,
most definitely,
some of them from
but
30 years ago, is utterly ridiculous.
right. Well, most definitely, it's ridiculous. It's prejudicial. It's inflammatory. There's no way for any person to mount a defense like that from 30, 40 years, because no one can remember, and especially Mr. Cosby, being that he's up in age, memories fade when you get older. That's just a part of life. So I certainly think it was wrong for them. I can say it. I think it was wrong for them to do this, and I certainly think that judge needs to be removed from the bench. That's my personal opinion. I've stated that, and in fact, there was an order. I don't think you know. I don't know if you noticed, Tom, but they were ordered at earlier, I think last week, that they have to turn over all of the emails with regards to the DA's office, in regards with from the DA's office in regards to the Cosby situation. Were you aware of that?
I am aware of that. And now, just so you know, I tried to disqualify Judge O'Neill, and
Right.
my motion was denied. Um, and we made a very, very careful record on what we thought was, highly improper about every aspect of the trial, from before the jury was picked to the verdict. So that record was as clear and as clean. Remember, 3 appellate lawyers making a record every day on what was wrong with that trial. And they did a wonderful job. I think his appellate lawyers have done a wonderful job. And we're all very, very hopeful that justice will be done and Bill Cosby will be liberated.
I think he will be. I think that this Supreme Court justice, from what you're reading in this article, I purposely put CNN up here because I'm trolling them for a reason. You know, CNN, NBC, ABC, Fox, all of them were prejudicial. And Boss Queenie even asked, she wanted me to ask you, since we're talking about Me Too, would like to ask your opinion on court cases in the Me Too era and how social media plays a role in character assassination before charges are even filed on someone. Can fair trials exist nowadays anymore? Just curious.
It's very difficult. I mean, I like to believe that our jury system is the best system in the world, that the largest quantity of justice comes out of our jury system, but it's very imperfect. It's never been perfect. You know, we have hundreds of people that have been released because of DNA evidence that were convicted by juries. We have people who've been released at every level of the system because juries made mistakes. Remember, a jury trial is not reality in a sense. A jury trial is a recreation of reality. It's a
Right.
recreation in a courtroom of something that happened in the past. You're not there watching things happen. It's a recreation because we need a justice system of some kind. We know it's not perfect, and we're supposed to follow certain rules and procedures that also are never perfect. If they were perfect, they would stand still. Our laws are always changing. Our procedures are always changing. We're always trying to find a way to get more fairness in the system, but we never get it in a perfect way. So,
Hmm.
from my point of view, a lot of good has come out of the Me Too movement. I think a lot of women were exploited through the years who didn't have a voice, but it's gone way too far. It's being exploited by people who are less than, don't have the integrity that you should have if you're going to take the position they're taking. And we have to be very wary of abuse. We have to be very wary of excess, and we have to be very wary that people will take advantage of any type of powerful, emotional, passionate social movement like this.
Well, here's, yeah. Well, my thing is, Me Too movement, social media, and Judge Joe Brown and I talk about this. They should not be giving real justice. Justice, of course, comes through the courts of law, based off of the evidence and unbiased proceeding, and that includes an unbiased jury. While I agree that victims who are abused should step forward, I just think it's a problem when you have situations like this, because everybody now that's on social media has a voice. So anyone can say something happened to them 10 years ago, 15, 20 years, and not have any evidence to prove that. And I saw that even with Mr. Cosby, because when this stuff started, I saw, for instance, the memes that were going on, and of course, the late night jokes that were going on, and so forth. Not, and even as a comedian, I respect people. I respect the stand up stage. But Bill Cosby, also, I look at it, and as you stated before, here is a man that actually was responsible for getting African Americans on television and showing them in a positive light. Uh, you know, if there were no Bill Cosby, there would be no Eddie Murphy. There would be, even Richard Pryor idolized Bill Cosby and said, he told Johnny Carson, uh, Johnny Carson asked him while he was on a Tonight Show with George Carlin, who are the comedians that influenced you, and he said two, Dick Gregory and Bill Cosby. And of course, Dick Gregory, because Dick was very close with Michael and his family. He actually took Michael to the hospital. Uh,
Yeah, I knew Dick was in Santa Maria, California during the trial, and I used to chat
right.
with him from time to time. Yes, he was a close friend of Michael for sure.
Yes, I knew him too. I had a chance to talk to him and interview him a few times, and he's well missed. But Mr. Cosby, so I was pointing out, this is a man that he opened doors for all of those black communities. And when we saw, I don't know what your opinion is on this, but like with the Hannibal Buress situation, uh, where he made that joke, and even he has kind of backtrack from it a little bit. We don't really hear much about him. A lot of people think he was just a, patsy to get this whole thing started. Do you have an opinion on that?
I really couldn't speak knowledgeably about that, but I
Okay.
want to tell you that Bill Cosby is one of the most brilliant men I've ever met. I mean, Bill Cosby is so brilliant in so many ways. I mean, he's a brilliant entertainer. He's a brilliant civil rights activist. He's a brilliant philosopher. He's brilliant about literature. I mean, he is so smart in so many different ways. It's just a tragedy to see him treated this way. And I hope he gets vindication.
Right. I think he will. I really believe in Tom. If you had, you can go back on my YouTube channel. You can also look on Nicole's YouTube channel. I'll send you the link to look at it. But I mean, it was live streamed and we were all excited. I was looking at it. I mean, at one point, the Chief Justice was even grilling the DA about this, saying, "Why did you have these prior bad act witnesses testify?" And did Tom? Uh-oh. Think Tom got out. I don't know what happened. We're gonna try and get Tom back again. Tom is missing in action. So hold on, guys. Whew. Been a good conversation so far. Don't you agree? All right, Tom's back. You okay, Tom? Tom? I don't know what happened, Tom. I think you gotta unmute yourself. I hear some clicking.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Tom. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, Tom. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, Tom. I can hear you. You gotta unmute yourself. I don't know what's going on. We're having a little technical difficulty. I can hear Tom very well. Can't you all? Let me try it. Hold on a second. I don't know why Tom can't hear me. All right. So we're talking about Bill Cosby, his appeal. I'm going to ask him some questions. If you guys had any more questions you want to ask so far, how do you like the live stream and what we're doing? Please donate to the Cash App as you see at the bottom to support more channels like this. And it looks like we got Tom back in. Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, something happened.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's all good. All right, yeah. So Tom's back, everybody. I didn't drop the call this time, Nicole. Yeah, Nicole was scared. It was like when the last time I called you and we got frozen. She's like, "You froze, call Tom." I was like, "No, I was just in a different area of the house." So I got a lot of people. We have I know the friends and family from the We Believe Bill Cosby Facebook page are in the building, like Jaleel and Clay Stevenson. Shout out to them. Uh, Boss Queenie says, I remember the judge saying on the December Cosby appeal something of the effect, well, if all of that happened, then why did you need the five witnesses? Right. And I remember that. And I said, he drops the mic on that one. Because that was one of the big ones, too, Tom, on that. And I mean, at one point, even the Chief Justice walked out while the DA was talking. Uh, I don't know if that's right that happens, but he turned the camera off at some point. I don't know what was going on, but he looked disgusted by what he was hearing. But I know everything is pending right now. I assume that we will hear back sometime in the spring as to their decision. But if they do grant his appeal, let me just ask you this: do you think this prosecutor would retry the case?
I would certainly hope not. I mean, Bill Cosby is 83 years old. He's blind. He's been through a nightmare with all of this. He's always maintained his dignity and his character and his courage. He's a fantastic human being. I just hope they'll just move on to something else.
I hope so too. And there's been a lot of money spent on that case that Mr. Cosby has put up. In fact, a lot of people think, just similar with Michael, this was an attempt to bankrupt him, especially over property that he had owned. I've heard and I've talked before about this. It was confirmed that back in the early '90s, Bill Cosby did try to acquire NBC, and I know, like in the '80s, Michael, of course, had that Beatles catalog, but he also, and this was confirmed from what I saw on Larry King, he was trying to buy Marvel Comics in the '90s, and before this trial started, he even was talking about buying the Universal Pictures library. I don't know if you ever saw that video that Pierce Morgan had. There was a voicemail that was played with Michael.
I did quite a while ago, as I recall.
Yeah,
But
right.
Michael and I talked about his catalog a lot. He felt his catalog was the root of all of this.
Yes.
And there was a book that came out by a British author called The Trials of Michael Jackson. And the central theme of that book was that the catalog itself, had triggered a whole series of events which resulted in his prosecution.
Most definitely. I've believed that as well. Uh, Most definitely, even with Mr. Cosby, I know that he actually owns a piece of property in Massachusetts that they've been fighting to get a gas pipeline through that the family has opposed. In fact, Camille Cosby, Mrs. Cosby, Dr. Cosby, as I should call her, she wrote an op-ed, I believe, in the local newspaper there, asking them to oppose the company that was putting the pipeline there before all of this stuff started. And so, I don't know if this, again, if that has something to do with it, but I've heard stories about it. And supposedly, the CEO of this company, I know this is all hearsay, but I've seen articles written where he says that they could destroy a celebrity if they wanted to. Now, whether that is tied with Mr. Cosby, I don't know for certain, but uh, I just know that this is the country we live in, and Black Americans, of course, are not, especially wealthy Black Americans who try to do positive things for their people, are not treated properly, or they end up dying in under mysterious circumstances. Even out in Los Angeles, where you're from, I mean, I just saw the documentary on Sam Cooke, and Sam Cooke, of course, was, at that time in the 1960s, was one of the few artists that owned his own record company and publishing, or so he thought. And he died under mysterious circumstances, and they said that he tried to rape uh, his victim. And sadly, we don't know the facts of this case. That case, it looks like it was rushed. But I digress. I just think of those things too. And Mr. Cosby, I know the Cosby family. Something very interesting, Tom, too, is that with Bill Cosby, when all of this stuff was going on, he was also under FBI surveillance. He was on Nixon's most wanted list in 1974. His family was audited at least two times by the IRS. So if they had all of this information and surveillance that was going on on Bill Cosby, couldn't they have destroyed his career effectively 40 years ago when this stuff happened?
Well, I'll tell you, fame and success make everyone a target. When you combine fame and success with African Americanism, and you look at the history of the way the way black celebrities have been treated in America, from Jack Johnson, I mean, it's really absolutely demonstrated and proven that black celebrities have a history of being targeted in America. There's no question about it.
Most definitely. And even the stuff with Michael, uh, and I guess you could talk about this. Someone mentioned they were lying about Michael, saying that he didn't want to be black. Michael gave more monies to historically black colleges than any other celebrity, if I'm not mistaken, even more than Dr. Cosby. He set up scholarships with the United Negro College Fund. And even when he bought that catalog back, I heard that the reason why he bought the catalog from back in the 80s, which was, they call it the Beatles catalog, but it was the ATV catalog. there were black artists that were in there, including Little Richard and Sly Stone and Nat King Cole. And my understanding is he tried to give Little Richard back his publishing. Dick Gregory says he actually gave it back and gave Little Richard, got Little Richard got millions of dollars because he got robbed out of it, and he even gave Sly Stone some money. And poor Sly. I've heard Sly was homeless at one point. Uh, I don't know if you know anything about him giving that to Little Richard.
I know he had great. He was very, very pro Little Richard. I know that. We talked a lot about what had happened in Michael's career in terms of exploitation, in terms of trickery, in terms of being ripped off, and he was very supportive of black artists who had been exploited. But
Right.
let me mention one thing. Michael was very, very sensitive and very bothered by these attacks that he didn't want to be black. And we
Right.
had a talk in his home in Neverland one day about this, and he said, Tom, these attacks that I'm trying to be white really bother me, really hurt me. And he lifted his shirt up to show me the vitiligo on his back, and his back, was patches of dark brown and white, because the vitiligo skin disease was forming white patches. And he was trying to find a way to cope with it because it was happening on his face. So he was trying to figure out a way as an entertainer to cope with the fact that his skin had blotches of white and brown. And he was doing his best to cope with it. And the attacks that he was trying to be white were very troubling to him.
Yeah. Uh, Paul Mooney, who I much respect to him as a comedian. I remember he told a story that Michael actually tried to pay him money to get him to stop making racial jokes about him. And Paul supposedly told him, I don't tell you what songs to sing and don't tell me what jokes to say. I remember, back in the night, yeah, a lot of people used to make fun of him and the Jackson family. But I also heard, though, he did have a sense of humor. Uh, Michael, of course, was close friends with people like Eddie Murphy and Chris Tucker, who I remember Chris Tucker did a Def Comedy Jam joke. What if Michael Jackson was a pimp?
Oh,
And, slow the car down, Tito, slow down.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Michael, as I said before, was very sensitive to how black artists had been exploited
right.
and how they ended up broke. He mentioned Sammy Davis Jr. to me, for example. He said, Tom, I visited Sammy Davis not long before he passed away. He was living in this beautiful mansion, but didn't have any cash, you know? And he talked about others who had been exploited and had been
Jackie Wilson.
so,
Yeah,
absolutely, mentioned him as well. People who had been so talented and so focused on their art, and just had their pockets picked. It
right,
bothered him tremendously. And one of the reasons he told me that he purchased that catalog was he didn't want it to happen to him.
right. Most definitely. Most
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Right. And that was a mark of a smart businessman. And I respect him for
sure.
that. I respect him for what he was trying to do. And yeah, but I mentioned all of that because even Eddie Griffin, who's I don't know if you saw him at the trial, but he was actually at Michael's arraignment when he told the story about to Vlad TV, and he actually said the joke he did on Comedy Jam. Michael said that was one of his favorite jokes. But I've heard even from Janet Jackson, she even did a story saying that he had a great sense of humor about some things. But yeah, I see. Jaleel says Paul McCartney felt so salty after the deal. Michael tried to get him involved, but he said no. My understanding of that was that Yoko Ono told Michael to go buy it because Paul McCartney tried to see if she was interested in buying it, and she said no. And even Paul was not interested in buying songs that he had created. He actually said that.
Hmm.
So I don't see why he was that upset when Michael went ahead and bought that because it was like once he bought it, he turned vicious on Michael.
Well, again, Michael proved smarter than so many people who were quite well known. in the way he purchased it, in the price he purchased it for. Um, and there was resentment and there was jealousy from all across the world to watch Michael, this, who was this, cute little kid who never took a dance lesson, who came up, with enormous amount of hard work, didn't have much of a childhood, and as a teenager, was calling the shots in his own profession in a way that you rarely see. Um, and to see him so talented, so successful in so many creative ways, to see him then turn into a super shrewd business person, left a lot of people very, very jealous and very envious.
Right, right. But yeah, he was a smart man, and I think that he learned, especially being at Motown, surrounded by Barry Gordy, who was family to him at the one point because that was Jermaine's father-in-law. He learned under that business. He learned under working with Holland Dozier and Holland and Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder about songwriting and all of those things. So yeah, and seeing his idols go broke too, like Jackie Wilson and Sammy Davis Jr. I just saw a documentary that aired. Well, it was about 30. It's about 35 years old, but it was on ABC News how Jackie Wilson was so broke that they couldn't even afford a headstone for his grave, and he passed away when he was about 49 years old.
Oh
And
boy.
yeah, and he got robbed by his executives. They actually would put their names on his songs that they had nothing to do with the creation of that song. I even saw Stevie Wonder's attorney was getting money for royalties on Stevie's songs. Uh, and I know for a fact he didn't write any of those songs with Stevie Wonder.
Well, look at Jimi Hendrix. He died with $5,000 in the bank.
Yes,
I mean, this has gone on for so long, and Michael was very sensitive to this and told me that, I want to make sure that doesn't happen to me, and that's why I decided to invest in this catalog. So this man was a genius in many, many different areas.
most definitely he was. And I want to tying that into, we got a lot of people who are commenting. Regina Palmer says, great part broadcast. Thank you. Shout out to Regina. Shout out to Brother Bernard, Judah Queen. Shout out to you, dear. Uh, the last topic and tying it in with me too, Tom, that I wanted to talk about. Bossa Queenie says these music execs are extreme leeches. Sad. Yes, that's true about Yoko. Clay said that. But I did want to ask you about this. I don't know if you're too familiar with, but tying it with me too, because someone mentioned earlier about whether or not we could get a fair trial. MTV had moved to suspend the Ti and Tiny show, which was I think was called the Family Hustle, but now it's called Hustle and Friends, if I'm not mistaken. And they've been accused of doing some dastardly things. It's my understanding too that Lisa Bloom, who is the daughter, of course, of uh,
Gloria
Gloria
Allred.
Allred, Gloria Allred, yes, is also involved in some way, shape, or form. She made a comment that was being shared. And I know actually you have a personal, well, not a personal relationship, but you've had interactions with Miss Allred with regards to Michael's situation, but also Bill Cosby's situation, because she actually was out there at the trial while this was going on. Uh, her clients were actually present at the hearings, at the trial for Bill Cosby. And, I've had this conversation with you, Tom, too. I find Gloria Allred to be an extortionist. This is my personal opinion. I think she's a ambulance chasing lawyer. But, why does she, why is the MO, everybody keeps going to her when situations like this happen? Or her daughter.
Well, I can't give you an answer to that.
Sure.
I know that both of them, they've both been very professional when they've been around me. Um, I first met Gloria. I think the first time I met Gloria was in the Michael Jackson case, where she was involved in an attempt to take custody of his children away from him. There's a what is called the Department of Children and Family Services that most cities have in California. And she made as I recall, made a petition or signed a petition or supported a petition to have Michael's children taken away from him. It was denied. And then, of
Right.
course, he was acquitted of every count. Um, so she was very much in the prosecution's camp in that case, as she was in the Bill Cosby case. She and her daughter were representing certain witnesses in the trial that were testifying for the prosecution.
Right. But well, I know you know them and been on a professional level. I've actually talked with Judge Joe Brown. He has some more harsh words. He has not those not how you described it, your interactions with her, but you know, my thing is though too, when I just see it, it seems like this is my personal observation, and even for others, it's like the personal MO when these celebrities get accused of something, they run to her. And I remember you even commented on CNN before you took the Cosby case. You mentioned how you were called to represent Mike Tyson. Uh,
Yes,
yeah,
that's correct.
could you talk about that just for a little bit?
This was around 2001. I got a call from a lawyer in Arizona who was doing a lot of civil work for Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson was being investigated by the district attorney's office in San Bernardino County, California. And remember, this was after Mike had been convicted and gone to prison. Um, and a woman had made an accusation that she was sexually assaulted. And this lawyer in Arizona asked me if I would be California counsel for Mike Tyson in the investigation. And I said I would. And we did our own. And by the way, Gloria Allred gave a press conference right away
Mm-hmm.
with this woman standing next to her attacking Mike Tyson. We did an investigation and discovered all sorts of problems with the accuser's past in terms of false statements and false accusations, etc. And our position was Gloria had not done any of her homework, basically just embraced this person immediately. And we put together an entire booklet of our own investigation in an attempt to convince the San Bernardino District Attorney's Office not to prosecute him. And when they saw the evidence we had, they declined to prosecute.
Right. They declined to prosecute. Yeah, so she had gotten involved, and we found you guys had found out that that case, you know, what they had alleged, the accuser was false, or that accuser was,
There were so many problems with
yeah,
what was described, so many problems with their investigation, that we handed them a very thick booklet with chapter after chapter of why the physical evidence didn't support it, why the background of the accuser was very suspect.
right.
Um, and we explored every angle of this case, gave them this booklet in advance. They looked at it and then got back to us and said, we're not going to prosecute. And that's the last time I ever heard Gloria was with that accuser.
Right. Yeah. Well, that. Yeah. I mean, well, you came, guys came prepared and did y'all research, but it's just like he was, you know, something like that. If you gave a booklet to them, they had to, pardon my French, but they were scared shitless of moving forward.
Well, they just realized they had no
Yeah.
case, that it was all a bunch of nonsense. Because
Yeah.
think about this. Tyson is a major celebrity, a real target for a prosecutor that wants to, get ahead politically. Tyson has already been convicted of sexual assault, already gone to prison. And even with that on the table, they look at our report and say, wait a second, we're not going to bring this case. That tells you how weak the allegations were.
Right. Right. Very much so. And I mean, that happens. I mean, what, see, my thing too, and relating it with T.I. and Tiny, and I've listened to what they're accused of. And yeah, Lisa Bloom has engaged with one of the accusers. Is confirmed here in this article in The Guardian. MTV suspends the show, but what is the burden, though, of proof now, especially in this era of Me Too, because our standards and our court system says you're innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law in a fair and impartial proceeding by a jury of your peers. And all of a sudden, it just seems like when an accusation is thrown out, or even multiple accusations, and Tom, you know that accusations, of course, are not convictions. You can have multiple accusations uh, being accused of something, even by different people. That doesn't mean it's true until the accusers and the story is vetted properly in a proceeding. So I don't know how we can, in moving forward, in my personal opinion, how we move forward with the Me Too era, because it just seems like people are picking and choosing what they want to support and believe. I mean, even our current president, Joe Biden, I remember when he was accused just last year by one lady, and they actually tried to bury that story. In fact, a former prosecutor, I covered it in my podcast. He actually put out an op-ed on why her story was not believable. So, are we really caring about victims? Are we really caring about getting down to the truth about these things? I mean, or is this just, it just seems like it's hit pieces more and more.
Well, don't forget what I said before. I mean, they're taking allegations from 20 and 30 years ago and bringing them into a courtroom.
Yeah,
And when you're defending allegations from 20 or 30 years ago, how do you find witnesses? How do you find forensic evidence? You know, where do you go to solve the case? I mean, it's easy to make accusations, but to refute them, to defend them, you know, when they're 30 years old is preposterous,
right,
absolutely preposterous. And you're seeing statutes of limitations changed a lot now. So people are bringing allegations from 20 years ago. And
right,
it's anyone can make an allegation, um, but the defense has to have an opportunity to investigate and prove it's not true. And again, how do you do a forensic test? Where do you find the witnesses who may have been there to observe, even the smallest part of the accusations? Where do you find them? It's
right.
very, very unfair.
Right. Where do you find the witnesses? Also, without incriminating yourself, do you know where you were defended on this day? Well, there's no way for me to remember that. Do you ever recall this witness or this accuser? Well, I can't say. I meet a lot of people. I mean, and as somebody who's a celebrity, they get and they interact with millions of people each day, or especially now with social media, you can reach out to different people. So yeah, I'm just monitoring this thing with Ti and Tiny, and I found it interesting because they're saying the activists with the Times Up and the National Women's Law Center are speaking out in support of Black survivors of sexual assault. But again, I just say that all people are innocent until proven guilty. And I mean, when you talk about MTV though suspending the show, I guess legally they can do that unless they had a contract, or you think that's just do you think that's just image wise why they do that? Because I know Bill had a comedy special on Netflix that was supposed to air back in November of 2014, and Netflix just suspended it.
Well, look, I mean, these are businesses. Their primary goal is not fairness. It's not justice.
Right,
It's not, treating people with dignity. Their primary goal is ratings and revenue. And they
right,
are very sophisticated at calculating what's going to bring in ratings and what's going to bring in revenue and what's going to negatively impact on those two things. So you can't look at them as people who care for 1 second about justice. All they care about is business. I mean, after the Michael Jackson acquittals, I had a private lunch at the Peninsula Hotel in Los Angeles with Berry Gordy and his children. And he
right,
used to have every second Tuesday of every month, he would reserve a small dining room and have a nice lunch with all of his children. And they would talk about what they've been doing. And they invited me to that lunch. It was a real honor to be there. And Barry said to me, "Do you know that you cost the worldwide media billions of dollars when you acquitted him?" And, I hadn't looked at it that way. I was focused on, justice for Michael and protecting Michael. Um, But he said this was huge business to see this man convicted, to see
Right.
the most famous man in the world rise to the greatest heights and then just splatter. And they wanted that last chapter because it would just generate a story of his rise and fall would generate so much revenue, so much media attention. And he said, "You cut them out of that. You must not be too popular with them." I said, "Well, I really haven't even thought about it." Yeah, so,
Right.
um, but that's what we're dealing with.
Right. Aphrodite Jones had a book actually called The Conspiracy Against Michael Jackson. I know you've met her before, and she was out there, I think, during Cosby's thing. Uh, she told me that a couple of my colleagues had stated she was acting much different when it came to the Cosby situation. But uh, but yeah, I remember reading that in the book about how no publishing company, when she was shopping this book around, wanted anything to do with a positive Michael Jackson book or anything that showed him in a positive light. Bossa Queenie asks, how do prosecutors, courts handle allegations when the accusers do not go to the police? Uh, I guess they handle it. I mean, if they don't go to the police, if the prosecutor believes strongly, they still put them on the stand, right?
I missed a little bit of what you just said, Gavin. There was a little bit of there
I'm
was a
sorry.
gap.
Bossa Queenie had asked, how does the court handle allegations when accusers don't go to the police? How does the prosecutors handle a situation like that?
Well, I mean, prosecutors are often wary of the media, and prosecutors will often tell witnesses, don't sell your story, don't talk to the media. You're going to look like you're out to feather your own nest. You can look like you're out to line your pockets, and the defense is going to come after you that you're trying to embellish all of this for attention or for monetary reasons. So prosecutors will often tell witnesses, they'll often tell accusers, don't file a civil suit. It'll look like you're after money. Don't go to the media. It'll look like you're after attention. And sometimes people listen and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I said the same thing. Black Mama said, how did Mario Lopez escape all the allegations against him while the same show that employs him fired the black guy from BET for the same accusations? I don't know if Tom can answer that, but that is a very interesting point. I guess the double standard. She's talking about AJ that worked for Extra at the same time when he was being accused of that. I mean, again, I think people just, they pick and choose what they want to fight. They pick their battles. Uh, my opinion. Judah Queen said, "Thank you for protecting Michael Jackson."
Well, thank you to everyone listening. And I'm really honored to be on the show. And Gavin is so knowledgeable about so many things. It's always a pleasure to be on his show.
Oh man, thank you. That is a compliment. See that, guys? Tom says it. I know it all.
He knows
Don't
everything.
take it from the top lawyer there. Tom, before you go, I did have a question I wanted to ask you. This story, just curious. What did you think of this? This happened this past week, where a woman, uh, sadly, she's from Louisiana, but she put Gorilla Glue in her hair, and she's considering filing a lawsuit against the company. Uh, I don't know if you've had experience with products liability or anything like that, but I was just going to ask you, if in your opinion, what would you think of a lawsuit like that if it had a chance to succeed? Have you heard anything? I've never heard of anything like this before.
Well, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I don't specialize in
Sure.
plaintiff's work, and I certainly don't specialize in product liability. So I'm really not. I'm the last person to ask about this kind of a case, and I don't know the facts either. I heard something vaguely about it, but don't know much.
Well, I could just tell you uh, she ran out of glue for her hair. She was apparently trying to put uh, some hairspray in for her edges and weave. And apparently, when she ran out of the normal hairspray, she ran and grabbed Gorilla Glue. And long story short, it didn't go well. So she's actually being flown out to Los Angeles, from what I heard, to get a plastic surgeon to help with her hair.
Well, I
Uh,
certainly wish her the best. I hope she's okay.
yeah, well, that's her on the screen there, and but I 40 years old. I'm not gonna get into it too much. I could go further, but yeah, I just didn't. Me personally, I was just looking at that. She's filing a lawsuit, and so okay, but yeah, she's being flown out. Somebody's yeah. Oh, and since we mentioned Motown, yes, sadly, Mary Wilson of the Supremes, one of the founding members, passed away earlier this morning. Tom, did you ever get to meet any of the Supremes or anything like that with regards to your friendship with Michael?
I didn't get to meet any of them. I talked to Michael a lot. Um, of course, he loved the Supremes, loved that era. Um, but I really didn't. I would never had the honor of meeting any of them, to my knowledge. Um, but chatting with Michael about that era, about Motown, about these wonderful artists that came up like he did, it was a
Yeah,
real honor, and I cherish those discussions more than you can imagine.
most
Uh,
definitely.
you know,
Yes, and we're losing a lot of legends. I mean, Mary Wilson dies, and I think last week it was Cicely Tyson and Cloris Leachman, and then a week before that, Hank Aaron. You know,
that's right, right. All great, great people. They accomplished so much.
yeah, especially Hank Aaron. Did you know that Hank Aaron is listed in the Guinness World Book of Records as having the most hate mail of any celebrity?
No, I didn't, and I can't imagine why.
Because he broke Babe Ruth's record, and there were a lot of racial connotations with that.
Oh my God, what a nice person. Can you
Oh, you've
imagine
met him?
someone? I have not met him. I know a lot of people that had, and everybody thought he was just the nicest, kindest, most decent human being. I mean, I heard that for years, but I didn't have the pleasure and the honor of meeting him.
Yeah, Mr. Well, I've heard a lot of things about Hank Aaron. Like one of the things I'm finding out too is he was an astute businessman as well. He put and owned about 20 or 30 businesses after baseball in the Atlanta area. He had a host of uh, crispy donuts, and as well as I think Popeyes and so forth that he owned, and he employed a lot of people and gave people jobs. So big shout out to him and his family. But yes, but that is sadly that is a true story of what happened, especially in the '70s. There was a story that was actually written right after he died, where the Atlanta Braves secretary talked about how it was her job to read and open all of his mail, the hate mail, because he would get it in bags and bags every day. So that's the type of mess black men went through, especially when we talk about breaking records, like we talked about Michael breaking so many records, including the Beatles and even his father-in-law. Because his father, Elvis's music, I think, is in some of the Sony ATV catalog, some of his
That's
songs.
correct. That's correct.
Right.
It's always been my understanding, unless things have changed. It's always been my understanding.
Yeah. Well, I think it is. I know that the family, from my understanding, they don't own the ATV catalog. I think it was sold a few years back. But yeah, his interest. But I think I know Michael's. He had his own catalog too, MJack, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
That was
right.
yeah. So he managed both ATV and his own. That's that was a smart man.
You're not kidding. He was a genius in so many different areas, and also one of the kindest, nicest, most generous human beings you'll ever meet.
Most definitely, he is missed, and he's well missed. The state of music even today. A lot of people I see that are coming up. I'll just say this about Michael: they haven't changed the game like he did. Michael, changed the game, just like James Brown did, his idol. And normally, you expect, you'll see successors, and they take it to a whole nother level. But most of what I've seen knockoffs of Michael Jackson, just clones. In my personal opinion. That's not saying that those artists aren't great, but it's just like once Michael did what he did, it's like nobody can touch that. So
Well, you know, in his book Moonwalk, he mentioned an incident. He was in his late teens and he was on the set of The Wiz,
yeah,
and everybody was rehearsing, and he didn't understand why everybody was being so cold to him. They were being very mean and distant and cold to him, and he didn't understand it because he couldn't figure out what he had done to deserve this. And one of the producers pulled him aside and said, "Michael, look, watch everybody watch everybody rehearsing. They're working hard day in and day out. The sweat, the effort, the work. You look at something and then you just copy it instantly and do it perfectly. You know, you look at it one time and you make a move and it's perfect. You don't even have to rehearse. But these people are working so hard, they're jealous. They've never seen anybody like this."
right. You told me that on the last show they
Yeah,
were just jealous and never saw anything like it. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, never took a dance lesson, never took a vocal lessons. He was just a natural. Yeah,
yeah.
it was in his blood. Yeah, yeah. And special shout out to I don't know if she's listening, but if anybody shows this to Mama Catherine, Catherine Jackson, shout out to her and even to her late husband Joe because they created the Jackson Five. Without them, and especially Joe Jackson, there is no Michael Jackson. You know,
They sure did a wonderful job. I mean, look at this incredibly talented, incredibly successful family in so many different areas. I mean, what a family they put together. It's remarkable.
yeah, most definitely. Uh, Michael was always influenced. He never copied. Right. He never copied Jaleel. He was influenced by Jackie Wilson, Fred Astaire, and James Brown and Sammy Davis Jr., but he always made his own. I one of the his favorite vocalists was actually I was trying to interview him was Russell Tompkins of the Stylistics. He actually admired the Delphonics, where the Jackson Five actually got their tuxedo ideas was from the Delphonics.
Hmm,
Uh, yeah, the legendary Philadelphia soul music group. Yeah, sounds like what's the songs that they've done? The Delphonics did not blow your mind this time, and La La means I love you. So yeah, those yeah, even though I'm young, Tom, I'm kind of an old soul. I like listening to old school music. I listen to new school music as well. But I grew up in my household. I can remember my grandfather playing like Cool and Again and Frankie
sure.
Beverly Mays, Earth, Wind and Fire. My dad is the same way. We play Mays featuring Frankie Beverly all the time, and he has style. He loves the stylistics and Motown. So we all listened and grew up on that. So Michael's a part of that. So much respect to him and his family and the
Absolutely.
Motown family. And rest in power, Miss Mary Wilson, to her and her family. Uh, our condolences and prayers. So,
Absolutely.
Tom, I appreciate you coming on once again, and you're always welcome to come on and discuss anything. Oh, before you go, I do want to ask the legal system. How is the legal system been affected with COVID? Are you guys doing virtual
We're
hearing?
doing a lot of virtual. A lot of things are being continued and delayed. Um, the courthouses are very empty, and you know the system is trying to use more Zoom, you know, more virtual. They're allowing attorneys to appear without their clients in felony cases like they would never have allowed before. Um, no, the system is in a state of flux. It's trying to adjust like every other institution in society, and it's bizarre, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, same here. They've started to, we have our virtual hearings. I'm a adjunct criminal professor, so we switched to virtual with everything. And I know when we do with court appearances, we can come in, but I think in different jurisdictions are different. They give you a certain time of when you're supposed to come in or when your hearing will be, so that way it's not crowded or anything like that. Some have just opened up to full capacity, just straightforward in different parishes, but at this point, until if it's a very weird situation, and honestly, I get flipped out, especially if I see it. where people are not socially distancing? Like, are we at the right set? Like you said earlier, are the precautions really working or effective? We just honestly, it's hard to tell.
Well, as I said before, I'm getting my second vaccination shot Thursday, and I don't expect it to change my behavior at all. I don't know how effective it's going to be. I don't know how long it lasts. I'm going to wear my mask. I'm going to keep my distance. I'm going to do things like I've been doing them all along.
Most definitely, that's what you got to do, and live your life and live it to the fullest as well. But okay, I just want to say, yeah, Russell Tompkins. Yes, Russell Tompkins was a stylistics. I just that's what I said. But the Delphonics, the Hurt brothers, and Wilbert Cade, I believe, that was the Delphonics as well. They were, idolized. Michael, grew up listening to those guys as well. And I know at one point he actually worked with Gamble and Huff. I think after well, I know for a fact after Motown, their Motown contract had ended, they went over to, I know it was CBS Records, but at one point Gamble and Huff were producers for the Jackson Five, and they wrote the songs "Show You the Way to Go," which is one of my favorite Jackson's singles. So, yeah. All right. Well, Tom, it is a pleasure. I thank you for coming on. You've been on for an hour and 30 minutes. I won't keep you further, but thank you once again, and hope to have you come back on some more.
Well, thank you, Gavin. You're a brilliant guy, and you run a wonderful show. And I'm so honored to be on it. And thank you for inviting me. And hopefully, I'll be on again.
Oh, you will be. You will be. Just
Thank you.
name the time and place. All
Well,
right.
thank you so much. Appreciate it. And appreciate everyone listening. And we want to wish everybody the best of health and a great future.
Most definitely, Tom. Same to you and your family. Be safe and be blessed. Tell Scott I said what's up.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
all right. Thank
Okay.
you. And that has been enough it for me. You guys can go to Tom's website as well, mesereaulaw.com, and look up his bio and victories that he has. You've heard his opinion about a lot of things, including Michael Jackson and Bill Cosby. And this is a man who also, let me just tell you one last thing about Tom. He will, every year, at least once, he gets involved with a pro bono clinic and will represent a client for free in a capital murder case in the South at least once every year. So he's actually putting in work helping others. And from what he even told me when I saw him on Inside Edition, but just from what he described about the Bill Cosby case, and he has said it before, he said the judges and juries that are in those cases, when we talked on the phone about this, they were actually far more fair and impartial than what we saw in the Cosby case. And he said it was the most uh, prejudicial case, one of the worst cases he has ever been a part of. He saw nothing like this. So it's good when we have people who were there, firsthand witnesses that were there, come on this platform and talk about things like that, because you're not going to get that on mainstream media. CNN is not going to put that there. MSNBC is not going to do that because they have an agenda. And sadly, even some of those who look like us are even a part of that. But we were grateful that Tom was coming on, and I'm thankful that he came here to talk again to us. And Tom is always welcome to come back. And you enjoy the rest of your week and this weekend, my friend.
Thank you, Gavin. Appreciate it. Best of luck to you and your family, and best of luck to everyone listening.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
And that has been it for me. This has been another edition of Gavin Richard Presents. Shout out to all who have been on here: Judah Queen, Black Mama, Rosalind, uh, Claydell Mar says, "Hey Tom." Yeah, all right. Uh, Thank y'all for tuning in. We will be back. Tune in Wednesday. Tomorrow, I will be on Queen Ahmadiyya Shakur's channel with the Honorable Judge Joe Brown. We will be talking about House Resolution 127. That is something that has been a hot topic on this platform as we talked about it last week, and I'm going to go on her channel and talk about it some more. So you guys tune in, and I think that's going to be about 6 o'clock my time, Central Standard. So You guys be safe, be blessed. I appreciate it. Thank you again, Tom. Peace,
Thank you.
guys.
Appreciate it very much.
All right. Good night, guys.